Step 2 of 12 of the steps pioneered by AA and adopted by many 12-step fellowships around the world, none of which I will claim any association with whatsoever. Step 2 says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so there's some stuff in there. This is where we get into the God stuff of the 12 steps. And often people get hung up and run screaming for the hills. And rightly so. Like, a lot of people have religious trauma. And, in fairness, there's been a lot of really horrible atrocities committed in the name of God. There's so many things. The Crusades, the residential schools, holy wars, jihads, all these things performed by confused people in the name of, what is, as far as I can understand it, in every conception, a loving God. I suspect very much if any of these deities came down and spoke to the people, if they existed, they would be, they'd have some words, and people are missing the message. People are missing the message, right? So, setting aside the God thing, and just considering that a higher power could be anything. It doesn't have to be capital G-O-D. It doesn't have to be that. I know for myself, I really struggled with that. I struggled with that for some of the reasons I noted. I'm also like I was an atheist. I was like I prided myself on my thinking. No, I'm too smart for that's nonsense of sky daddies and things of this nature. And so I struggled with that stuff. I grafted, I tried various things. I grafted on different people's ideas to make the higher power thing work for me. I did some gymnastics mentally to make it work. And, this talk, my hope is that perhaps it can prevent you some of that. You can get right to finding something that works for you. I know it was an important part of the process for me, though. Just trying on different spiritual hats. But the important part is cutting through that belief that it does have to be someone else's, that it has to be some conception that's already there. Some of the things that really make sense to me now are things like karma. And karma is often misunderstood, but like the essence of karma, and to save getting in any arguments about this, the essence of karma, as I understand it, is cause and effect. It's not like, I do a bad thing and then later I get hit by a lightning bolt. No. It's, if I lie, I have karmic results. Like, I feel uneasy, or people don't trust me. Just direct cause and effect. So this to me can be a higher power because it can be more powerful than just my own wheedling and trying to make things go in my way. If I just trust that if I take wholesome actions, that is to the maximum benefit because the results will be also in line with that, I can trust that. And that's not to say that as long as I do the right things, all good things are going to happen to me. That's never going to be the case. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff outside of my karmic consequences. And that's a whole conversation that we don't need to travel down. But the higher power of mindfulness can be really beneficial, I think. Because when I pay attention, possibilities open up. One person, Dr. Pat Carnes, says that the principle behind step 2 is awareness. Often it's said that it's hope because, you have a hope for a better future, a hope that things can change, a hope for freedom from insanity. But I've been thinking about this awareness idea, and I think that really, it speaks to the truth of like opening up to the possibilities of the world. Because that's what this step does. It opens me up to perhaps a new way of being. If I've been in that, if I've been in patterns of drug taking or trying to control people or binging and purging, trying to chisel the perfect body relentlessly, like any of these kind of obsessive processes or, drug addictions, my awareness becomes very narrow in these situations. It's like I start to find, it's like that phrase where if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem becomes a nail. And it's like that with, like especially when I was doing drugs, I just did drugs in every situation. It's just like happy drugs, sad drugs, mad drugs, like tired drugs, right? Like it just, and I eventually started to apply that to like controlling people and training, like my fitness training. It's just like as long as I can just like put my mind into like bench pressing or doing burpees, whatever, then I felt in control. So this principle of awareness, it opens me up to different things, to different potentials, to perhaps like these powers that I've been talking about, the power of mindfulness or a creator God, whatever you can fit into there. But the only limit is the ones that the only limits are the ones we place on ourselves as far as a higher power. As long as it's something that you believe can move you towards the goals you hope to achieve, that's what matters. A lot of people use a group of people. Our God often has been said, a group of drunks or a group of druggies. Good orderly direction. So it can be principles. It can be, it can be the principle of love, the principle of kindness. I think loving kindness can be a power greater than myself. Because it's something I can check myself against, and then if I just let it guide me, because loving kindness exists within me and all of us, but also all these other things do as well, right? And on any given moment, my mind can take me in any directions, right? So if left to what I believe is my own power, there's all these other things mixed in. But if I were to use something like this as my North Star, it's like, okay, what would love do in this situation? What would be the next loving act? And, of course, it can get kind of convoluted. Codependency can come into this quite easily, right? We can lose track. And I think that a truly loving act isn't one that will also be at the detriment of myself. So there's no giving and giving and giving until I'm, naked and broken is not true love, true loving kindness, as far as I understand it, there's that saying that's like, if someone steals your jacket, give them your shirt. And that's like a very, righteous sounding ideal, but then I'm naked in the street, right? And so I think that's not a true expression of love. Like, I think the true expression of love is, yeah, sure, let them have my jacket, and then, like, be at peace with that, right? And just make peace with it, and then, like, move on my way. So if we can get past the higher power hurdle, then that's amazing already, because it allows us to do the work to move into the process of the rest of the steps. And it's a vital one. It's vital to be able to have faith in this. And that's why it's so important to have a personal one, a personal higher power. Well, maybe personal is the wrong word, but a higher power of your own understanding. Someone once said that the steps will work in spite of the person working them. So I think like that means even if a person doesn't really believe the steps will still work if you work them. I think that's true to a point, but I think having a strong belief in the process, in the higher power, the higher power could be the steps themselves if you really buy into this process. But that belief strengthens it, I believe. And the other part that people often have a point of contention with is the insanity bit. Who are you calling insane? As one of my favorite mentors has said. And a lot of people really are doing some insane stuff. Really, if you think about, take away the pejorative, the insulting nature of that word insanity, and consider, like, I know my drug use was insane, right? Like I said, I use drugs in any situation, right? Like regardless, I was just like, drugs were the answer. And I wasn't getting like I definitely wasn't getting the result I was looking for anymore. Like when my drug use ended me up overdosed in the hospital on the regular. Like I just, and that's not what I was gunning at. But I knew that was coming. Like I knew I couldn't avoid it eventually. Like towards the end of my using, I couldn't avoid that. I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was coming, and so I still went down that road. I mean, like that's pretty insane. Tell me the person that works 100 hours a week or 80 hours a week or even just works a normal amount, but then comes home and is obsessed about work and what's going on at the office. Tell me that's not a little bit insane. And I mentioned that because it's working things like this are socially acceptable. I'll use the word addictions. You don't have to get attached to that, but they're socially acceptable addictions, and so are often overlooked. But I knew a guy and he had all of the rest of his addictions. They were all at bay. They were all at ease. He had relief from them, but he couldn't get his work life sorted out, and he completed suicide because of it, because it was so bad. And I think that's not, I don't think that's uncommon, that it drives people really, really to some dark places. So anyways, that insanity of doing the same thing and hoping for something different, whether you like the word insanity or not, I think we can agree that this is some unskillful behavior to do these things over and over again, hoping for something else. Another question that's useful to consider with step 2 is what is real? If the principle is awareness, then the question being what is real? And so this really ties into like the belief in a higher power of my own understanding, because like for some people, the beautiful loving sky daddy is real, and that's wonderful. But if it's not for you, then what is? Is nature? Is the power of nature real? Is the power of the great spirit? I don't know what, like I could just throw out examples, but what is real and what is real in this world? What is real in the world as it relates to my addiction or my issue that I'm trying to release? What I've found is that the reality was that like I don't think that I could have just stopped doing what I was doing in any of the situations, in any of the examples I've given, without finding a power that could support me, like a helpful, positive strength that could support me. And like there's some debate about like whether it has to come outside of oneself or can be something within. I won't get into that, but I had to find something that I believed could help me get out. Because there was times when I just like tried to set my will, and I was like, okay, well, like I'm not going to do this, and then I would not for a while, and then I would end up doing it again. And I think that's something to do with that space needs to be filled with something. And often people fill it with a new addiction or a lesser addiction, addiction switching. Going from drugs to maybe just smoking cigarettes to maybe just overeating, maybe just compulsively working out, whatever. But there's an alternative to fill it with maybe a program or a power that's just generative, that's just helpful. So like I said about the stuff that's real, to me, I believe that, the cause and effect is real. I can believe in that. And, I've said this example a few times, but please don't get it, take it for what it is. That's just an example of how I see things. I don't want you or need you to think that. That's my example. So whatever's real for you is important. And a thing that's also been helpful for me is acting as if. There's a saying that's fake it till you make it. And I think I did more than my share of faking it all through my life, so I don't need that in my life anymore. But reframing that to acting as if, acting as if I believe. So if I find a higher power that maybe will work for me, I can at least act as if that's the truth, and that can carry me forward into doing the rest of this work. That even if I just open my mind a little bit to say, like, maybe this is possible, maybe change is possible, maybe these steps can work for me. I'm listening to this dude talk about it right now, and clearly it's, well, maybe not clearly, maybe I sound like a lunatic, but maybe it's worked for him. And if I just believe that it has, as he's suggesting it has, then maybe it could work for me as well. He's a person, I'm a person, this is a person thing. So if I act as if and then take the action, that was really important. And that's how using a higher power that was of someone else's understanding still benefited me, because I didn't know what I was looking for. But until I did, I was still able to make progress, even just to, talking to a God that I wasn't really sure was there, praying to a God that I hoped and wanted to be there, but I didn't really have faith in. It's still just the power of those intentions and that practice propelled me forward into healing, into recovery. Some of the questions that have been helpful as well, that are just like kind of step 2 general practice, are things like, what is my current understanding of God? Maybe there was some religious trauma for you, as there has been for many people. Maybe there was a God, forced on you by your parents. And that was another question. What was told to you by your parents? And often our relationship with our parents is what shapes our view of God, because this is when we're infants and toddlers and children, our parents essentially are God, right? They have all the power. And so if our parents are, when our parents are unskillful, because they always will be, because they're human at some point, then we can extrapolate this to say that the higher power is like this too. The higher power is unreliable. A higher power can be scary. And if you were to choose a higher power for yourself, what would it be like? What characteristics would it have? Maybe these are some things that can get you thinking and help you on your way to finding a power. And, for some people, this is really easy, and that's really great. But for some people, this second step and the following third step can be some of the hardest, just because of this, because of so much, because of past history. And so for me, it's one that's really important to talk about, and I feel really strongly about it, because it's important, and it matters. Like, I think it matters, like, because some people will just say, like, oh, just like, believe in God and you're fine and just move on. This isn't, like, people will just say this step is like a 5-second issue. But for those of us with these hang-ups and these pains, these hurts, it's not easy. It's like it's taken me many days of work to sort out what works for me in this area, and a lot of trial and sadness and hurt and frustration around it. So if that's been the case for you, then I empathize. And so may you find a power greater than yourself to propel you forward in this process, and may you be well.